or a vegan and you're looking to start an elimination diet, to follow a diet that will help you to reverse or improve your symptoms, your autoimmune symptoms, maybe if you have any dealing with any other chronic illnesses or conditions, then this is the right training session for you. My name is Anindita and I am a functional medicine certified health coach and a practitioner, and I help and guide women with autoimmune conditions, severe chronic illnesses like autoimmune conditions, reverse their symptoms with their bodies as their guide using a functional medicine approach. And of course, food is medicine. That's always where I start. And if you're already watching this video, you would know that because that's the reason you would have chosen to embark on a elimination diet. Maybe try and figure out which foods your body is not able to tolerate. Maybe it's dairy, maybe it's gluten, maybe it's a few other foods, and you are sort of dealing with some kind of symptoms, and this is exactly what my client was going through. And on top of that, of course, she was vegetarian. She was almost vegan actually. She was already off dairy because that was setting off her diarrhea. She had massive diarrhea and she'd had this ongoing diarrhea for almost 7 years by the time I met her. So it's like basically was chronic and extreme diarrhea. So anything and everything sort of used to set it off. So by the time she started working with me, there was hardly anything that she was eating, right? So for example, that she was told that of course salads are good for us, right? So but in her case, the raw salads used to set off intense cramping and pain. The juices are good for us, vegetable juices and smoothies. In her case, again, that was setting off a lot of severe pain related symptoms. So and she was at a loss to figure out what else she could eat, and she was already on a very restricted diet. She had gone off dairy to help her condition, which had actually not improved at all. And so she was basically a vegan. She had been a vegetarian before, and there was nothing much for her to remove from her diet, right? And of course, she was dealing with nutrient deficiencies, maldigestion, malabsorption, and malnourishment, which is what kept her stuck. So it was kind of like a vicious cycle, and that's unfortunately very common, like in many chronic illnesses, because we don't get to the root cause or why, what's figuring out what's going on, what are the triggers, why is it going on. And it always invariably starts with gut health. That's where we always look at. And the first part is to first figure out and start explore. So when I start working with any client, I start exploring, whether they are on a vegetarian diet or not, or a vegan diet or not. It's about exploring and finding out what has been their history, what foods have they consumed in their childhood, what are they consuming now as they're adults, what foods are triggering their symptoms. They'll of course know if there is some food which is not suiting them. And again, here in this particular client's case, a lot of the lentils and the pulses were making her very gassy. As I said, raw foods did not suit her at all, and that again becomes very common with a lot of people who have an overgrowth called a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So it's quite common, it's because of the bacteria in the wrong place. We have a whole host of bacteria in our gut, primarily in the large intestine, in the lower part of the intestine. But if it happens to become misplaced and come up, that's what creates a whole host of these symptoms and issues. And so we can also do a food intolerance or sensitivity test to figure out which foods are a problem. So I usually do a mix of taking the history and then also doing a test. And once this is complete, comes one of the most important parts. This is where you need to start, which is the planning and the preparation, because for eliminating a certain foods, we need to eliminate them for at least 4 to 6 weeks to see successful maybe reversal of symptoms, maybe actually finally figuring out which foods are causing a problem, seeing some improvement, finding some symptomatic relief, right? And finally, more importantly, getting on to creating real health, sustainable health, right? So that's where we start, and that's the reason we start with food. And what happens in most cases, which is a good thing, is that once my clients see that they're feeling so much better, they tend to stay off those foods, right? They don't want to get back. And it's happened recently with a client who's just finished working with me for 6 months, and she's feeling so much better off dairy. She has some amount of, I think she has eggs, but dairy and wheat, that she said, I don't want to get back to those foods actually. I'm happy to not have them, or at the most have them just once in a while. So we are doing a reintroduction right now, but she's really in a good place and she wants to stay in that place. So it depends. But as I said, starting with a plan is important. and creating a clear plan of action as to how we'll go, go about doing this. So I help my clients to figure out, okay, this is what we'll be doing first, then this is what we'll be doing next. And I always approach this from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. So rather than focusing only on things that you will be removing, I always focus on things that you will be adding to the diet, which is the same thing I did with my first client that I mentioned today. So we started focusing on foods that she could consume. So in her case, it was cooked foods, right? She was not in a position, her body was not able to digest those raw uncooked foods, so we had to switch completely cooked food, which is absolutely fine. So we put in a lot of soups, we remove salads completely, so everything had to be cooked for her, right? So I didn't want her to take any raw foods, and again, these are temporary measures, but they provide immense relief. And at the same time, you're then finally be able to absorb those nutrients which your body desperately needs, and certainly was in her case, because the idea means that your body doesn't have the time to absorb these nutrients before they pass out of the body, of the system. So as we moved into cooked foods and all, our body was able to absorb nutrients better. Of course, in some cases, depending on client to client, I also do add in some kind of supplements to support their digestion. It depends on the client, right? It's not one size fits all approach. And also what happens is that so we focus on snacks, we focus on I give a sample meal plan, lunch and dinner, breakfast, to get them started. But I don't want them to be stuck with those limited menu options, right? I think that's a danger of doing these kind of diets where we only focus. I of course give a step-by-step guidance so that my clients know exactly what to eat and what to avoid, but I don't want them to get stuck in the mindset that they have to eat those few foods and nothing else, because it can become really boring and tedious. So I want them to explore, and I want them to use their own strength of creativity to come up with new recipes. And today it's really easy because it's at the click of a mouse. So you can actually get more recipes, and whenever they need my help, I do give that. I do give options, etc. So as far as vegetarians and vegans are concerned, what you need to be concerned about is getting enough protein in your diet, because this is one group of nutrients that typically goes missing. The other one might be healthy fats, but this is a big one. And in the case of vegetarians who were having dairy earlier, and now anyways I'm going to ask them to take off dairy, I need to ensure that they have a good source of protein and maybe calcium and all, but because not every vegetarian or vegan actually ends up having a lot of plant-based foods, right? They might be having a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, but they're not having enough vegetables, right? That's the difference, and that's actually something that I again make my clients become aware of. It's not enough to only look at because we then otherwise end up having a very grain-based diet, right? That's not helpful for most people. So it finally also depends on what kind of diet each person is consuming and what actually is going to suit that person. Those are the changes that we need to make, and it's not going to be a cookie cutter thing. We will have to figure out, and then we will have to customize. And these are the three main challenges that I have seen my vegetarian or vegan clients face when embarking on an elimination diet. Number one is making sure the diet can become really restrictive and boring. I already talked about that. Number two is getting nutrients from a large variety of foods, because some food groups go out. So making sure we have to be even more careful that we're getting nutrients from different kinds of a variety of foods, right? Rather than just focusing on a few grains like only wheat, maybe not being able to not actually expanding a diet, so maybe to millets, for example, right? And of course the last one is also preventing nutrient deficiency. So as we remove certain foods, we can actually become deficient in certain nutrients if we don't do it the right way. So with my guidance, my clients are able to do this such that they do not become deficient in any nutrients. They're able to actually get much more in because as I said, the focus is not only on removing foods, it's mostly on getting the right foods in. But I want you to first understand what are the typical nutrient deficiencies that can occur on a vegetarian, especially vegan diet. But again, remember that just because you are vegetarian, vegan doesn't mean you're deficient in any of these. You might be having a whole variety of foods. You might be having a lot of plant vegetables, so you may not be actually deficient in any of these, right? Nuts and seeds, but it does happen for a few people. So vitamin B12, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, zinc and iron. I have a bad cough today. So increasing healthy proteins and fats are important, and this is a key area of focus right from the beginning for my vegetarian and vegan clients. And these are a few favorite tips to get started. One is cooking oils. Second is nuts and seeds. Third is a protein powder or in a smoothie. And lentils, beans and chickpeas. And fourth is avocados. Between these, it ensures that you are getting enough of healthy proteins and omega-3s, right? That's something that you need. And in some cases, I do add some supplements as well. So as I'm talking about how you can successfully embark on an elimination diet, I am actually focusing more on what you need to eat rather than only focusing on what you're eliminating. So once again, reiterating the fact that focusing on nutrient-dense foods is what we need to do. Jenny, thank you for joining. If you have any questions, you feel free to drop them below. I'm just talking about what foods that vegetarians and vegans on an elimination diet need to focus on, and what are the things they need to keep in mind. So focusing on nutrients dense foods like vegetables, fruits, legumes, pulses, lentils, nuts and seeds are very important. Having a color of the rainbow is it's key here. So all kind of fruits and vegetables. Keeping a food journal helps to track if there are any symptoms that have cropped up because of any particular foods that you've removed or added. And finally, getting creative with your meals are very important. So figuring out new recipes, trying out new foods, expanding your variety of foods is key here. And I typically provide a lot of resources and information to my clients to help them to find new recipes and in books and resources. So if you have any questions, drop in the comment below so that I can get back to you. Give me a second. Jenny, you will actually understand this, and pain is a very, very common symptom. And if the pain is due to disease, it will also ease when you remove certain foods from your diet. It will help. You will get to know. So elimination diet actually is really useful in cases like this, because it helps you to understand which foods were actually increasing the pain levels, which is your typically inflammatory foods like dairy and gluten, and even some of the other foods. It depends on person to person. At the end of the elimination diet, after 4 to 6 weeks, when you start reintroducing those foods, and there is a system, there's a process that we follow, that is when you will get your answer. So you will know exactly which foods were actually triggering. But we do know that sugar is inflammatory. It increases pain levels, and a lot of the inflammatory foods like dairy and gluten contribute to pain. I hope that is helpful for you. Let me know in the comments. And food sensitivity tests work to some extent. It's not about food sensitivity tests. I don't bank on only the lab data. I do look at food sensitivity tests because it gives us some kind of information, but it's not a complete set of data. I think elimination diet we call is the gold standard. That is why we do an elimination diet, because when you do it properly for at least 4 to 6 weeks, your body will give you much more accurate data than any test could probably give you. But we do use food sensitivities, and there are different versions which are more accurate than some others. But it gives us a good understanding, and the way I use it is I use it along with the elimination diet to figure out what's really going on. And maybe there like something like an yeast overgrowth as there, because there is a high IgG antibodies towards yeast and all. So those are the things which may go missing sometimes, which is why I use food sensitivity tests. I hope. Let me know if that was helpful for you, Jenny. Shaili, if you have any questions, drop in. If there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer them right now on elimination diet, on vegetarian, vegan diet, or any other questions that you have in terms of diet. Are there any other questions that you have? And also, yeah, more than welcome. If you like what I have to say, then make sure that I have a couple of slots that are available in my coaching program, 6 months coaching program. It's called Healing from Within. Food is a big part of that. It's a 3-pillar framework. If you would like to know more, send me a DM so that we can have a chat and we can see if it's a right fit for you. So make sure that you send me a DM and let me know, and I'll see you soon.